Life is full of suffering. Agree. So we shouldn't bring children into this world. Why is that? Then they will have to suffer from breathing, sneezing, sweating, crying, being hungry, being in pain, and so on and so forth. We all do that. Yes, but you are already alive. We can't do anything about that now. But children who are not yet born shouldn't suffer like you do, because they did not consent to being born to this suffering. Nobody asked them before they were born if they wanted to suffer or not. So basically you're saying that we need consent to be born, which means there is somebody need to give us consent, which means that consent is a requirement to be born, which means that life requires some kind of consent, which means that, wait a minute, did David Benatar just crack the secret behind creation itself? Whoa. There is a consensus that consent can only be given by actual or implied moral agents. But an unborn, unconceived child is a non-existent, I shouldn't even say entity. Then how does David Benatar say that they can actually consent? And if David Benatar says that an unborn child, a non-existent being, can consent before coming into life, then the only plausible explanation is that he has cracked the origin of life itself. Religions will tell you that life is predestined and a gift of God. Dharmic traditions say that you are reincarnated into this world according to your past life karmas, which means that your death determines your next birth. How you die is a very good indicator as to how we are going to be born in the next life. Abrahamic religions like Christianity, Islam and Judaism says that God, the Creator, personally created each individual in His image with a combination of virtue and vice and sends us here until He decides if we lived a good life or not, and that takes us to heaven and hell after death. How are these ideas any different from what David Benatar is saying? He says that somebody should consent to be born, otherwise their parents are immoral. How does an unborn child consent? Where does this happen? Was there an arbitrator between that consent giving? You might say that David Benatar actually means that any life form that assumed its life hasn't consented to being here. But again, the same question is posed. How and where do they do that? Where should they have been consented to be born? Can you say that we are forcing new life into this world when there is no scope for consent to begin with? We are all life in our most basic sense, just pure life. The special function of a cell to produce its own energy, self-sustain itself, to grow and to reproduce itself. It is this property of the cell that then becomes tissues, organs, organ systems, and finally the organism. We know all of this, but science is yet to find out how life actually began and why life began. Science cannot determine the exact probability of what kind of life begins at what period in time or space. If so, then how can we even start to contemplate that life needs consent, or that life should not begin if it didn't consent? I was watching the interview that David Benatar had with the Cosmic Skeptic, and in that he is posed with a very problematic question, wherein if an unborn child, or if my unborn child is a potential human being which is better off not having been born, wouldn't it then also become moral to kill me as long as you can guarantee that I will die a painless death. Which means that if an unborn child is a potential human being, or which is better off not living, then isn't my future self also a potential being for whom the same rule applies? Because tomorrow I'm going to suffer. So isn't it better to kill me right now painlessly so that my suffering ends? So that's there. Again, understand when antinatalists say that life is suffering and there is no way for us to completely eliminate suffering from our lives. But the problem begins when they give the solution that they give, that is to stop having children because of that and to let humans go into a phased extinction. That's where the problem starts, because I don't think that that's a solution that you should even consider or talk about. So then you might ask, what about the suffering then? What do we do about that? Yes, suffering is a part of life. You cannot do anything. If you are dead, then you wouldn't be suffering. But is that reason enough to die? Or should that be reason enough to die? Some types of sufferings in our lives are just struggles to grow and become a better human being, or to achieve the greatest dreams and aspirations that you have in your life. And some suffering is very much needed to bring us love and togetherness. And then there are some other kind of suffering that is unwanted, that is caused unnecessarily, and which is just cruel, sadistic. We need to be able to distinguish between all of these. And the last one that I talked about should be avoided completely. That is, you should not suffer needlessly, and nobody should cause suffering through their actions. And as far as we are concerned, as far as the free world is concerned, these rights are already given to us. We have the inalienable right to pursue our happiness. Be it abuse, neglect, abandonment, bad parenting, or something that happens from outside your home that's quite external, they should not happen. There is no excuse to that. But for the other kinds of suffering, which is just inevitable part of life, especially if you are getting out of your comfort zone and growing yourself as a person and trying to be the best version of yourself, those are not permanent. And when you solve your problems, the suffering will also go away. You can alleviate and overcome all of this in a wide variety of ways. A major part of human intellect goes into understanding this and solving these problems. And we are blessed with a lot of solutions already. But even if we did not have good enough solutions, or regardless, the answer to suffering should not be extinction. Human extinction, or that humans go extinct, is never a solution to any of the human problems or any of the problems that the world faces. When you say that new life did not consent, and when you say that you are forcing some kind of suffering upon new lives, and for the same reason that humans should not have children anymore, have you taken into account the suffering that's going to be caused to all the living people in this world right now? And that too based on a fictional idea of consent before birth. I really do believe that either David Benatar or any of the antinatalists should have to come up with when and where you can consent before being born in a quite comprehensive way, or this philosophy doesn't have much standing because its most basic premise does not hold. My greatest dream was to become an author and share awesome stories with you guys. I've published my first book, a novel named Life in a Ziploc Bag. It's the story of 4 kids living in a city with their unique life experiences. They are connected by the chaos in their lives, which are fueled by drugs, abuse, and isolation. I don't want to give it all away right here. You can check it out on Amazon or Flipkart. It's also available for direct buying. All these links are given in the description. If you are interested, please go and check it out and grab your copy right now. Thank you.